Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. Rain fell softly over Gotham City, each droplet catching the glow of streetlights as it descended through the night air. The gentle percussion against the windows of Wayne Manor created a soothing rhythm that would normally have lulled Bruce Wayne to sleep, but tonight rest eluded him. He stood at the tall windows of his study, watching the city lights blur through the rain-streaked glass, his mind turning over reports of strange occurrences throughout Gotham's neighborhood. "Still awake, Master Bruce?" Alfred's voice came gently from the doorway, carrying with it the faint aroma of chamomile tea. "I thought you might benefit from something calming." Bruce accepted the offered cup with a grateful nod. "Thank you, Alfred. I was just thinking about those hospital admissions we've been tracking. 3 more cases tonight." Alfred moved to stand beside him at the window, his reflection appearing in the glass alongside Bruce's. "The patients with the nightmares," he said, his voice measured and thoughtful, all reporting the same sensations upon waking. "Exactly. Paralysis followed by intense anxiety that lingers for hours. Clinical evaluations show nothing physically wrong, but the psychological impact." Bruce sipped the tea, letting its warmth spread through him. "Something's happening in this city, something subtle enough to stay beneath most people's notice, but not beneath yours," Alfred observed quietly. The rain continued its gentle rhythm, creating a peaceful counterpoint to Bruce's troubled thoughts. In the distance, thunder rumbled softly, like the city itself was sighing in its sleep. "I've been analyzing the geographical distribution," Bruce said, moving to his desk where maps of Gotham lay spread across the polished surface. "The cases appear random at first glance, but there's a pattern emerging. They radiate outward from here." He indicated an area in Gotham's East End, following the city's water distribution system. Alfred studied the map, his experienced eyes noting what others might miss. The old pharmaceutical district. Most of those buildings have been abandoned for years. "Most, but not all," Bruce agreed. "And the timing of these cases corresponds with increased activity at this particular location." He pointed to a building marked on the map. A former research facility now supposedly vacant. Electrical usage has spiked there over the past 2 weeks, despite the property being listed as unoccupied. The tea's warmth and Alfred's steady presence had begun to create a cocoon of calm around Bruce, despite the troubling mystery. Outside, the rain continued its gentle symphony against the windows, while inside, the fire and the study hearth cast dancing shadows across the room. "The pattern of symptoms," Alfred said thoughtfully, "reminds me of something I read about in one of your case files. Dr. Crane's work." Bruce nodded slowly. "Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow." The name itself seemed to bring a chill to the warm room. "His fear toxin has evolved over the years. The early versions were crude, causing immediate and obvious terror. But the last time we encountered him, he was working on something more insidious. A slow degremit variant," Alfred recalled, "designed to trigger nightmares rather than immediate panic. A toxin that works its way into the subconscious," Bruce confirmed. creating fear that builds gradually rather than erupts suddenly, more psychological than physiological. Alfred gently took the empty teacup from Bruce's hands. Perhaps it's time Batman paid a visit to that supposedly vacant building. Bruce looked out at the rain-soaked city once more. Yes, but first I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. These nightmare reports. There's something familiar about them, something I can't quite place. The cave beneath Wayne Manor hummed with quiet energy as Bruce descended the stone steps. The familiar environment welcomed him, the gentle dripping of water echoing through vast limestone chambers, the soft whir of computer systems, the occasional flutter of bats far above. These sounds had become as comforting to him as the rain against the windows upstairs. Screens illuminated Bruce's face with a soft blue glow as he accessed patient records from Gotham General. Dr. Leslie Tompkins had provided them confidentially, concerned about the pattern she too had noticed. The nightmare descriptions played across the screen in clinical language that still couldn't mask the emotion behind them. Patient reports sensation of falling through darkness, recurring image of shadows gaining substance, reaching out, overwhelming sense of being watched by something unseen. Bruce's fingers paused over the keyboard. The description stirred something in his memory, not just of Scarecrow's previous work, but something deeper, more personal. He closed his eyes momentarily, letting his mind reach for the connection. Master Bruce. Alfred had followed him down, carrying a tray with a fresh pot of tea. I've taken the liberty of contacting Dr. Meridian. She's agreed to consult on the psychological aspects of these cases. Chase Meridian? Bruce nodded. Good thinking. Her expertise in dream analysis could help us understand what Crane is targeting. He gestured to the patient files on screen. There's something about these nightmares, Alfred. They seem tailored somehow. Alfred set the tray down and studied the screens. Indeed, almost as if they were designed to resonate with specific fears. His eyes moved thoughtfully across the reports. Have you noticed that many of the victims share certain biographical elements? Childhood trauma, particularly involving loss of security or attachment figures? Bruce's attention sharpened. You're right. That can't be coincidence. Perhaps Dr. Crane is testing his toxin on subjects most likely to produce strong responses, Alfred suggested. Individuals whose psychological makeup already predisposes them to certain types of fear. The cave's ambient sounds seemed to grow more pronounced as they sat in contemplative silence. Water droplets falling into underground pools, the distant rustling of bats shifting in their sleep. Bruce found his breathing naturally slowing to match this subterranean rhythm. I should go to that building tonight, he said finally. Alfred glanced meaningfully at the time display on the computer. It's nearly dawn, Master Bruce. Perhaps a few hours rest would be advisable before confronting whatever Dr. Crane has prepared. Bruce looked ready to object, then his shoulders relaxed slightly. You're right. A clear mind will be my best defense against Crane's manipulations. He stood, stretching muscles tight from hours at the computer. Set the system to continue analyzing the geographical spread of cases. Of course, Alfred replied. And shall I prepare the filtration systems in the cowl? The latest improvements should provide some protection against airborne toxins. Bruce nodded gratefully, yes, and contact Lucius about that experimental neutralizing agent we discussed last month. We may need it sooner than anticipated. As they ascended the steps back toward the manor, the cave seemed to exhale around them, its ancient darkness a different kind of shadow from what awaited in Gotham's troubled dreams. Bruce's sleep was unusually deep that morning, his mind finally surrendering to exhaustion, but even in sleep, the mystery followed him. His dreams carried him through Gotham's streets, past buildings that shifted and reformed like liquid, while shadows moved with purpose at the corners of his vision. In the dream, he was searching for something vital but unnameable. Each street led to another that seemed familiar yet wrong, slightly distorted versions of places he knew intimately. The rain continued to fall, but silently now, each droplet freezing momentarily in the air before continuing its descent. "Master Bruce." Alfred's voice reached him through layers of sleep, gentle but persistent. "Dr. Meridian has arrived." Bruce opened his eyes to afternoon light filtering through partially drawn curtains. He had slept longer than intended, but felt surprisingly rested. The dream lingered at the edges of his consciousness, significant in a way he couldn't yet define. "Tell her I'll be down shortly," he replied, already rising. As he prepared himself, fragments of the dream continued to surface, the sensation of being guided by something unseen, the feeling that answers lay just beyond his reach. Dr. Chase Meridian waited in the study, her professional demeanor softened by genuine concern. "Bruce," she greeted him warmly, "Alfred tells me Gotham is experiencing a very particular kind of troubled sleep." "Thank you for coming, Chase," Bruce replied, gesturing for her to return to her seat as he took the chair opposite. "We're dealing with something that seems to be in your area of expertise." Alfred appeared with refreshments, then positioned himself near the doorway, attentive but unobtrusive. "I've reviewed the case files you sent," Chase said, opening a slim portfolio. "The nightmare patterns are fascinating from a clinical perspective. There's a cohesive, symbolic language running through them, very unusual for spontaneous dream events across different individuals." "Suggesting external influence," Bruce concluded. "But precisely. These aren't random terror events. They're structured psychological experiences." She removed several pages of notes. "I'm particularly interested in the recurring motifs. Shadows that move independently of light sources, sensations of falling that transform into floating, childhood locations that become labyrinthine." Bruce felt a shiver of recognition. "Those elements appeared in my dream this morning." Chase's expression grew more serious. "That's concerning. Have you experienced any unusual anxiety upon waking, lingering disorientation?" "No," Bruce answered truthfully, "but the dream felt significant, as if it contained information I needed." Alfred stepped forward slightly. "If I may, Dr. Meridian, Master Bruce has extensive training in meditation and mental discipline. Could that affect how this toxin, assuming that's what we're dealing with, influences his subconscious?" Chase nodded thoughtfully. "Absolutely. Someone with Bruce's psychological training might process the compound differently. Instead of triggering terror, it might manifest as symbolic communication." She turned back to Bruce. "Your mind could be trying to decode the toxin's effects through dream imagery." Outside, the rain had stopped, but grey clouds still hung over Gotham, diffusing the afternoon light into a gentle glow that filled the study without creating harsh shadows. The atmosphere was conducive to the kind of deep thinking the situation demanded. "If Crane is using the water system for distribution," Bruce said, "we need to identify exactly how and where. The concentration must be extremely low to evade standard testing." "Which explains the selective impact," Chase added. "Only those with certain psychological vulnerabilities would be affected by such minute doses." Alfred cleared his throat softly. "Perhaps, Master Bruce, you might consider allowing yourself limited exposure under controlled conditions. If your mind is indeed processing the toxin differently, it might reveal aspects that others cannot perceive. Bruce met Alfred's gaze, understanding the concern behind the suggestion. It's risky, but you may be right. If I'm already affected, we might as well use that to our advantage. I would need to monitor you closely, Chase cautioned. And we would need a neutralizing agent ready. Lucius is already working on that, Bruce assured her, and the Batcave has medical facilities that rival any hospital in Gotham. As they discussed the details, Bruce found his attention drawn repeatedly to the windows where Gotham lay beneath the blanket of clouds. Somewhere out there, fear was spreading silently through the city's veins, and time was running out to stop it. Evening settled over Gotham like a gentle veil, streetlights coming alive one by one as daylight faded. In the Batcave, preparations were complete. The medical area had been configured according to Dr. Meridian's specifications, with monitoring equipment positioned around a reclining chair that looked incongruously comfortable among the cave's technology. The neutralizing agent has arrived, Master Bruce, Alfred announced, carrying a sealed case. Mr. Fox sends his regards and a note indicating this is the most promising formulation. Bruce, dressed simply in training clothes, examined the case's contents. Several precisely measured doses of clear liquid in specialized delivery devices. Did Lucius include the technical specification? All uploaded to the main system, Alfred confirmed. Dr. Meridian is reviewing them now. They moved to the medical area, where Chase stood examining readouts on a screen. She turned as they approached, her expression professional but underlaid with concern. Bruce, I want to emphasize that this is unprecedented territory, she said. We're essentially using your trained mind as a detection system for a psychological toxin. There are significant unknowns. Understood, Bruce replied calmly, but every hour we delay means more affected citizens. If my experiences can help isolate the compound signature or locate its source, it's worth the risk. Chase nodded reluctantly. We'll need to induce a sleep state that allows dream activity while maintaining partial consciousness, similar to lucid dreaming. Your meditation training should help achieve this balance. I'll monitor your vital signs throughout, Alfred added, already configuring the various senses. At the first indication of distress, we administer the neutralizing agent. Bruce seated himself in the chair, feeling the familiar sense of calm that preceded any dangerous mission. The cave's ambient sounds surrounded him, water trickling through ancient stone, the distant rustle of bats, the barely perceptible hum of advanced technology. These elements had always helped center him, and now they would serve as anchors for his consciousness. Remember, Chase said as she attached the final monitoring electrode to his temple, your goal is observation, not engagement. Try to maintain awareness that you're experiencing an induced state. And Master Bruce, Alfred added quietly, we remain present with you throughout. Whatever you encounter, you are not alone. Bruce nodded, meeting each of their gazes in turn. Then he settled back, closed his eyes, and began the breathing technique that would transition him into the state they needed. His awareness of the cave gradually receded, replaced by a floating sensation that carried him down into darker waters of consciousness. The dream began differently this time, not with Gotham's streets, but with the familiar grounds of Wayne Manor. Bruce found himself walking through gardens illuminated by soft moonlight that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. He maintained the dual awareness Chase had described, knowing this was an induced state while still experiencing its reality. Remarkable clarity, he heard Alfred's voice, distant but distinct, heart rate and brain activity stable. Bruce continued through the gardens, which gradually transformed into a maze-like arrangement he didn't recognize. The hedges grew taller with each turn until they towered above him like walls, yet he felt no claustrophobia, only curiosity, and the certainty that something important waited at the center. Following some kind of pathway, he heard himself saying, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. The landscape is symbolic, a journey inward. Excellent narration, Bruce. Chase's voice came as if from a great distance. Try to identify any elements that feel particularly resonant or charged with emotion. As if in response to her words, Bruce noticed certain plants in the garden maze emitting a faint luminescence. When he approached these, sensations washed over him, brief flashes of memory, fragments of emotion, a child's laughter, the scent of his mother's perfume, the weight of his father's hand on his shoulder. The toxin is linking to memory centers, he reported, maintaining his observer stance, creating associations with early experiences. The path led inward, the maze growing more complex but also more beautiful, with flowering vines that released soft, luminous pollen into the air. Bruce noticed that breathing this pollen deepened the dream state, making the boundary between observer and participant more porous. "Be cautious," Alfred's voice warned, somehow sensing this shift. "Your physiological responses are intensifying." Bruce acknowledged this with a thought, knowing somehow they would perceive it. The center of the maze was now visible ahead, a circular clearing where a familiar figure waited, seated on a stone bench. "I see Scarecrow," Bruce reported, or rather Jonathan Crane, without his mask. The figure looked up as Bruce approached, adjusting spectacles with a scientist's precise gesture. "Interesting," the Dream Crane said. "You've maintained coherence longer than the others. Your mind has remarkable architecture, Mr. Wayne." Bruce remained at a careful distance. "This isn't really you. You're a projection created by my mind's interaction with the toxin." Dream Crane smiled thinly. "Does that distinction matter? I represent what you seek to understand. Ask your questions, if you wish." "The water system," Bruce said. "How is the toxin being distributed so precisely?" "Look down," Dream Crane suggested. Bruce glanced at the ground and saw that what he had taken for a stone pathway was actually a miniature model of Gotham's infrastructure. Tiny pipes and conduits forming an intricate network beneath the garden maze. Nanoscale delivery, he realized, studying the model. The toxin bonds to specific mineral compounds present in older sections of the water system. "Very good," Dream Crane nodded. "Your mind translates complex chemical concepts into visual metaphors quite effectively." Bruce knelt to examine the model more closely. Certain sections glowed with the same luminescence as the special plants. "The East End distribution hub," he said. "That's the primary injection point." "His heart rate is increasing," came Alfred's concerned voice from above. "Blood pressure rising as well." Bruce tried to maintain his observational stance, but found the dream pulling him deeper. The garden maze was changing, the hedges withering rapidly as darkness spread from the center where Dream Crane sat. The luminous flowers dimmed one by one. "What you've absorbed is merely a dilute version," Dream Crane said, his form growing less distinct as shadows gathered around him. "The full formula does more than create nightmares, Mr. Wayne. It creates a bridge between fears." The ground beneath Bruce began to shift, the miniature Gotham infrastructure crumbling away to reveal another level below. Dark water that reflected not the dream sky, but scenes from throughout the city. People tossing in troubled sleep, shadows gathering in hospital corridors. Creeping fear spreading from house. A city-wide shared nightmare, Bruce understood. You're connecting individual fears into a collective experience. Dream Crane was barely visible now, his form almost entirely consumed by shadow. Fear is strongest when we believe we face it alone, but what happens when an entire city realizes they're afraid together? That's the real experiment. The dark water began to rise around Bruce's feet, cold and insistent. With it came whispers, fragments of Gotham's collective fears swirling like currents. Bruce felt his observational distance slipping, the toxin pulling him toward full immersion in the nightmare landscape. His vital signs are approaching threshold levels. Alfred's voice was more urgent now. Dr. Meridian, should we administer the neutralizing agent? Not yet, Chase replied. He's accessing critical information. Bruce, if you can hear me, try to locate where Crane himself is operating from. The physical location. Bruce focused his will, pushing back against the rising waters of collective fear. The dream space responded to his resistance, the darkness receding slightly. He directed his attention to the crumbling model of Gotham that still showed through the dark water in places. There's a secondary structure, he observed, noticing a section of the model that remained intact despite the decay around it. Not the pharmaceutical building we identified earlier. That's just a distribution point. Crane's actual laboratory is... He focused on the tiny structure, which began to glow with recognition. The old water treatment research station, beneath Arkham's East grounds. The revelation came with a surge of certainty, and with it, a shift in the dream landscape. The dark water rose more rapidly, and the shadow that had consumed Dream Crane now expanded outward in pulsing waves. Bruce felt it reaching for him, no longer just a visual phenomenon but a tangible force, cold fingers of fear seeking entry into his mind. I have what we need, Bruce said, his voice sounding strained even to himself. The neutralizing agent now, Alfred. Administering, came the immediate response. Bruce felt a sharp tug at the boundary between dream and wakefulness, as if something was pulling him back toward consciousness. The shadow substance reacted violently, reaching tendrils toward him with sudden urgency. It doesn't want me to leave, Bruce observed with the last of his analytical detachment. The toxin actively resists interruption. The shadow substance formed a human-like shape before him, not Crane this time, but a figure from deeper memory. A masked gunman in a darkened alley, arm outstretched. "Oh, Bruce," he heard Chase whisper, understanding what he was seeing. "Stay with us, Master Bruce." Alfred's steady voice provided a lifeline. The neutralizing agent needs 30 seconds to fully circulate. The shadow figure approached, its features shifting between the gunman and something more primal, fear given its most personal form. Bruce held his ground, maintaining the knowledge that this was a chemical deception, nothing more. "You understand now why it had to be you," the shadow spoke with a voice like crumbling stone. "Your fear has such perfect form, such refined architecture. And yet it doesn't control me," Bruce replied, feeling the neutralizing agent beginning to take effect, clarity returning in waves. That's what Crane never understood about fear. It's not the experience that matters, but what we build from it. The dream landscape began to dissolve around him, the garden maze, the dark water, and the shadow figure all losing coherence. Bruce felt himself rising back toward wakefulness, carrying crucial knowledge with him. His eyes opened to the familiar surroundings of the Batcave's medical area, Alfred and Chase looking down at him with matching expressions of concern and relief. "Welcome back, Master Bruce," Alfred said, removing monitoring electrodes with practiced efficiency. You were under for 43 minutes. Bruce sat up slowly, his mind processing the transition between dream state and reality. It worked. I know where Crane is operating from, and I understand how the toxin functions. Chase checked his pupil response with a small light. Your resistance to the compound is remarkable. Most subjects would have been completely subsumed by the hallucinations at the concentrations you experience. Years of exposure to Crane's earlier formulations may have created a partial immunity, Bruce suggested, accepting the water Alfred offered. Or perhaps facing one's worst fears repeatedly builds a certain resilience. Alfred's expression softened momentarily. Indeed, sir. Few have confronted their fears as directly or as often as you have. Bruce moved to the computer array, his steps steady despite the lingering effects of the induced dream state. The toxin is being introduced at the East End distribution hub, as we suspected, but Crane himself is operating from the abandoned water treatment research station on Arkham's grounds. That facility was decommissioned years ago, Alfred noted, following him to the screens. Which makes it perfect for Crane's purposes, Bruce replied, pulling up schematics of the location. It has direct access to test laboratories and the older water systems, but isn't included in current security patrols. He highlighted sections of the schematic as he spoke. The compound is designed to create a progressive fear response. Initial exposure triggers nightmares, but repeated doses build towards something more complex, a kind of shared consciousness of fear that Crane can potentially direct. A city unified by terror, Chase said soberly. The psychological implications are staggering. And on a practical level, Alfred added, mass panic would be catastrophic for Gotham's infrastructure and emergency services. Bruce studied the schematic intently. We need to neutralize both the distribution point and Crane's lab simultaneously. If we only target one, he'll simply adjust from the other. He turned to Alfred. Contact Lucius. We need enough of the neutralizing agent to treat the main water supply at the East End hub. Right away, sir. Alfred moved to a communications terminal. Bruce faced Chase. Your expertise has been invaluable, Dr. Meridian, but what comes next could be dangerous. Alfred can arrange secure transportation back to the city. Chase's expression was resolute. My patients are among those affected, Bruce. I'd like to remain involved, at least until we understand the full medical implications. She paused, then added more softly, besides, you may need someone to monitor your psychological responses if you encounter concentrated versions of the toxin. Bruce nodded, respecting her decision. Alfred will provide you with emergency protective gear, just in case. As preparation activities intensified around the cave, Bruce felt the familiar, calm focus that preceded mission deployment. The dream journey had provided not just tactical information, but a deeper understanding of what they faced, a threat that operated through the architecture of fear itself, using the mind's own structures as its pathway. Night had fallen completely over Gotham by the time Batman emerged from the cave. The Batmobile moved silently through rain-slicked streets, its systems gathering environmental data that confirmed the spread of Crane's toxin through water vapor rising from the city's drainage systems. Air moisture content matches the samples analyzed from the dream state. Alfred's voice came through the cowl's communication system. Mr. Fox has delivered the neutralizing agent and configured it for wide air dispersal. Understood. Batman navigated through less trafficked routes, avoiding areas where the concentration appeared highest. The filtration system in his cowl provided protection, but minimizing exposure remained prudent. Dr. Meridian? Monitoring from the cave, Alfred confirmed. She's coordinating with Gotham General to prepare for increased admissions once we move against Crane. The sudden interruption of the toxin may cause temporary spikes in symptom intensity. The city passed by in a blur of lights reflected on wet pavement. Gotham at night had always possessed a dreamlike quality, a landscape of shadows and illumination where reality seemed more fluid. Tonight, that quality was enhanced by the knowledge of what flowed invisibly through its streets. "I've identified the optimal approach to the research station," Batman said, studying tactical displays. "The northwest access tunnel connects directly to the main laboratory space, based on thermal imaging. Satellite monitoring shows minimal movement at the site," Alfred replied. "Either Crane is working alone or keeping his operation deliberately small." "Consistent with his psychology," Batman agreed. "Crane rarely trusts collaborators with his research. He considers it too important to share." The Batmobile turned eastward, heading toward the abandoned grounds of Old Arkham. Once a sprawling complex, parts had been demolished years ago while others simply fell into disrepair. The water treatment research station lay in this neglected zone, officially condemned but structurally sound enough for Crane's purposes. As Batman approached the perimeter, he could feel the slightest pressure behind his eyes, a subtle indicator that Crane's toxin was more concentrated here. His cow's filtration system adjusted automatically, capturing and analyzing the compounds present in the air. "Toxin levels 5 times higher than city center readings," he reported. "Definitely the source." "Exercise extreme caution, sir," Alfred advised. Even with the cow's protection, prolonged exposure at those concentrations could be problematic. Batman exited the vehicle silently, moving like a shadow across the overgrown grounds. Decades of psychological darkness seemed to have seeped into the very soil here, creating an atmosphere of abandonment and decay that persisted despite the rain's cleansing efforts. The northwest access tunnel was partially concealed by collapsed scaffolding, making it appear impassable to casual observation. Batman moved through the obstacle with practiced efficiency, scanning continuously for security measures. Crane was not known for conventional traps, preferring psychological deterrence, but caution remained essential. The tunnel descended gradually, its walls changing from crumbling brick to more solid concrete as it reached the research station's foundation level. Faint light seeped from around a corner ahead, accompanied by the barely perceptible sound of liquid flowing through pipes. Batman paused, activating enhanced sensory input through his cowl. The light had a particular quality, not electric but chemical, with the slightly pulsing luminescence he had observed in the dream state. The sound resolved into more distinct patterns, the rhythmic pumping of mechanical systems moving fluids through filtration and distribution processes. "I'm approaching the main laboratory," he subvocalized. "Light signature matches compounds identified in the dream analysis." "Your vital signs remain stable," Alfred confirmed. "But Dr. Meridian advises that the visual similarity to your dream experience may trigger psychological resonance, even with the cowl's protection." Batman acknowledged this with a slight nod, knowing the cave's systems would register the gesture. He moved forward with heightened awareness, both of his surroundings and his own responses to them. The laboratory space opened before him, a cathedral of fear chemistry. Tall glass columns filled with luminous fluids cast their glow across scientific equipment both modern and antiquated. Crane had created a workspace that bridged centuries of research, combining cutting-edge pharmacology with alchemical apparatus that could have belonged to medieval fearmongers. And there, moving between workstations with the precise grace of a lifetime scientist, was Jonathan Crane himself. Without his scarecrow mask, he appeared almost ordinary, a slender, scholarly figure whose wireframe glasses caught the light as he leaned over bubbling solutions. Only the intensity of his focus as he adjusted valves and measured compounds revealed the obsession that drove him. Batman remained in the shadows, assessing the situation. Multiple pipelines led from distillation equipment to larger distribution systems embedded in the walls. Interrupting these would be necessary, but not before securing Crane himself. "I've located Crane and the primary distribution setup," he reported quietly, preparing to disable the systems and apprehend him. "Mr. Fox, neutralizing agent, is ready for deployment at the East End hub," Alfred replied, "awaiting your signal to proceed with simultaneous neutralization." Batman prepared to move, calculating the optimal approach to minimize Crane's opportunity to trigger emergency protocols or release concentrated toxin. But before he could advance, Crane straightened suddenly, looking directly toward Batman's position in the shadows. "I know you're there, Batman," Crane said, his voice eerily calm. "I've been expecting you. In fact, I'd have been disappointed if you hadn't found me." Batman remained still, analyzing how Crane could have detected his presence. The answer came in the subtle shimmer of the air between them, nearly invisible until you knew to look for it. "You've aerosolized a detection compound," Batman observed, stepping partially into the light, "something that reacts to the carbon dioxide in exhalation." Crane smiled thinly, appearing genuinely pleased. "Very good. It's gratifying when one's work is appreciated at a technical level." He gestured around the laboratory. "You're wondering about the scale of this operation, I imagine. Why work from such humble surroundings when I could have commandeered more sophisticated facilities? Because this location gives you direct access to Gotham's original water system," Batman replied, moving slowly around the perimeter of the space, noting each piece of equipment and its function. "The infrastructure most people have forgotten exists." "Precisely." Crane's enthusiasm was that of a professor with a promising student. "Modern filtration would neutralize my compounds before they could reach the distribution stage, but these old pipes, dating back to Gotham's founding, they carry water to places the city planners don't even remember." He adjusted a valve, sending a pulse of luminous fluid through a nearby pipe. "Did you know that beneath this city lies a perfect delivery system for fear? How poetic." Batman continued his careful movement, positioning himself between Crane and what appeared to be the main control panel. "Your toxin is affecting innocent people, Crane. People who've done nothing to deserve the terror you're inflicting." Something hardened in Crane's expression. "Deserve?" "Fear isn't about deserving, Batman. It's the great equalizer, the one truly universal human experience." He picked up a small vial of concentrated solution, holding it to the light. "This current formulation is actually quite gentle compared to my previous work. It doesn't trigger heart-stopping panic or cause people to harm themselves or others. It simply connects them." "Creates a network of shared nightmares," Batman said, recalling the dark water rising in his dream. Crane's eyes widened slightly behind his glasses. "You've experienced it directly then. Fascinating. Most minds lack the architecture to perceive the connective elements." He studied Batman with renewed interest. "What did you see in the dreamscape? How did your particular fears manifest within the shared space?" "Alfred," Batman sub-vocalized, "initiate the neutralizing protocol at the East End hub. Now." "Understood," came the immediate reply. "Deployment commencing." Batman refocused on Crane, who was watching him with the unsettling intensity of a researcher observing a particularly interesting specimen. "Your experiment ends tonight, Dr. Crane." "Oh, I wouldn't call it an experiment anymore," Crane replied, setting down the vial and moving toward a larger tank of swirling luminescent liquid. "We're well past the testing phase. Tonight was meant to be the full deployment, Gotham's graduation from individual nightmares to collective terror. He placed his hand on the tank almost affectionately. Imagine it, Batman, an entire city dreaming the same dream of fear, their minds linked through the architecture of their shared terror. To what end? Batman asked, continuing his careful approach. What purpose does mass fear serve? Purpose? Crane seemed genuinely surprised by the question. You still think in such practical terms. Fear isn't meant to serve a purpose. It's an end in itself, the purest form of human experience. His voice took on an almost reverent quality. When we're afraid, we're at our most honest, our most authentic. Strip away everything else and fear is what remains. While he spoke, Batman noted that several monitoring displays around the laboratory had begun flashing warning indicators. The neutralizing agent at the East End hub was already affecting the distribution network. Crane, absorbed in his philosophical explanation, hadn't yet noticed. You're wrong, Crane, Batman said, deliberately drawing the scientist's attention. Fear isn't the foundation of humanity. It's merely one aspect of a much more complex experience. What remains when everything else is stripped away isn't terror, but resilience. Crane's expression darkened. A comforting fiction you tell yourself, but I've studied fear more deeply than anyone alive, and I know its truth. He turned toward his control panel, finally noticing the warning indicators. His movements became suddenly more urgent. What have you done? Introduced a neutralizing agent into your distribution system, Batman replied, moving forward now with greater speed. Your toxin is being rendered inert throughout Gotham as we speak. Crane's academic calm shattered, revealing the frantic intensity beneath. No, you don't understand what you're interrupting. He lunged toward an emergency protocol station, a series of switches that presumably would trigger a concentrated release. Batman moved faster, intercepting him before he could reach the controls. Crane fought with surprising strength, the desperation of seeing his life's work neutralized, lending him temporary power. He managed to strike a glancing blow against Batman's cowl, a hit that would normally have minimal impact, but which came with the sound of breaking glass. A vial had been concealed in Crane's hand, now shattered against the cowl's surface. Highly concentrated toxin, its luminous substance now leaking through the filtration system. Alfred, Batman managed to say before the first wave hit him. Crane had a contingency. Master Bruce, Alfred's voice came urgently through the cowl. Your biometrics are spiking dramatically. Dr. Meridian is preparing the advanced neutralizing protocol. Batman fought to maintain his focus as the laboratory around him began to shift and distort. The concentrated toxin worked with frightening speed, creating overlapping realities. Crane's face seemed to flicker between his human appearance and the burlap mask of Scarecrow, while the laboratory walls pulsed like living tissue. Now you'll truly understand my work, Crane said, his voice echoing strangely. At this concentration, the toxin doesn't just create fear, it manifests it physically. Batman forced himself to remember his training, to separate chemical hallucination from reality. He could still see the actual laboratory beneath the nightmarish overlay, could still track Crane's movements as the scientist retreated toward his emergency controls. With tremendous effort, Batman launched himself forward, tackling Crane before he could reach the switches. They fell together, sending laboratory equipment crashing to the floor around them. Glass shattered, releasing more toxin into the air, but also damaging crucial components of the distribution system. No, Crane cried out as pipe connections ruptured, his precious compound spilling uselessly across the laboratory floor. Years of research. Batman maintained his hold on the struggling scientist, even as the hallucinatory effects intensified. The world around him kept shifting between reality and nightmare, the laboratory alternating with infinite darkness, where shadow figures reached for him with grasping hands. Master Bruce listened to my voice. Alfred's steady tones cut through the hallucination. What you're experiencing isn't real. The neutralizing agent is being prepared for direct administration. You must restrain Dr. Crane and find cover from additional toxin exposure. The familiar voice provided an anchor, allowing Batman to focus long enough to secure Crane with restraints. The scientists had stopped struggling, instead watching with academic interest as Batman fought against the toxin's effects. Fascinating resistance, Crane observed, somehow visible even through the encroaching shadows. Your mind creates structures to combat the influence. Most subjects simply surrender to the experience. Batman dragged himself and his captive toward the laboratory entrance, away from the heaviest concentration of airborne toxin. Each movement required immense will as the hallucinations tried to convince him that the floor was dissolving beneath him, that the air itself had weight and substance. The neutralizing agent has successfully deployed throughout the Eastern Distribution Hub, Alfred reported, his voice a lifeline through the darkness. Dr. Meridian confirms that hospital admissions for nightmare symptoms have already begun to decrease. Batman reached the tunnel entrance, pulling Crane with him into the relatively cleaner air. The toxin's grip loosened slightly, allowing moments of greater clarity between hallucinations. You've merely interrupted one approach, Crane said, his academic detachment returning now that his immediate work was destroyed. Fear always finds its channel, Batman. If not through chemistry, then through other means. Perhaps, Batman acknowledged, securing Crane to a structural support. But not tonight, and not through you. He activated his beacon, signaling for emergency GCPD response with hazardous materials protocols. Then, as another wave of hallucinations threatened to overwhelm him, he administered the emergency dose of neutralizing agent that Alfred had insisted he carry. Neutralizing compound administered, he reported, his voice steadier as the antidote began to take effect. The toxin's concentration was significantly higher than anticipated, but the countermeasure is working. Thank heavens, Alfred replied, relief evident in his voice. Dr. Meridian confirms that your biometric readings are stabilizing. GCPD hazmat units are 4 minutes from your location. As the hallucinations receded, Batman looked at Crane, who sat with the calm resignation of a scientist whose experiment had reached an unexpected but still interesting conclusion. You experienced the shared dreamscape, didn't you? Crane asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. You saw how the fears connect, how they form a collective architecture. I saw a manipulation of basic neurochemistry, Batman replied. Impressive science, but not the profound revelation you believe it to be. Crane smiled faintly. We'll have to disagree on the interpretation, but I am curious. In the dreamscape, what form did your particular fear take? Everyone's is different, yet connected to the whole. Batman remembered the shadow figure in the garden maze, its form shifting between specific memory and primal fear. It doesn't matter what form fear takes, Crane. What matters is how we respond to it. The psychologist's answer, Crane nodded, seemingly satisfied. Perhaps that's why you resist the toxin so effectively. You've integrated your fear rather than attempting to eliminate it. The sound of approaching sirens filled the tunnel, bringing with it the reality of police flashlights and hazmat procedures that would soon secure this place. The nightmare was ending for Gotham, at least for tonight. They'll confiscate my research, Crane observed calmly. Lock it away in some government facility where no one will truly understand its significance. Good, Batman replied simply. As GCPD officers in protective gear entered the tunnel, Batman stepped back into deeper shadows. His work here was complete, though the effects of Crane's toxin would linger in subtle ways throughout Gotham for days to come. Dreams, even nightmares, didn't simply vanish when their cause was removed. Rain had begun falling again as Batman emerged from the abandoned Arkham grounds, washing away the last traces of airborne toxin. The Batmobile waited, its systems already processing environmental data to confirm that Crane's fear experiment was truly neutralized. "Owl readings indicate successful containment," Alfred reported as Batman entered the vehicle. "Dr. Meridian suggests you return to the cave for full medical evaluation, given your exposure to the concentrated compound." "On my way," Batman confirmed, feeling the last of the hallucinations fading as the neutralizing agent completed its work. The rain-slicked streets of Gotham passed by outside, the city unaware of how close it had come to a night of collective terror. In the Batcave, Alfred and Dr. Meridian waited with medical equipment ready. Batman removed his cowl, allowing them to conduct a thorough examination as he reported the details of the confrontation with Crane. "The concentrated dose you received would have completely incapacitated most people," Chase observed, studying his neurological readings. "Your resilience is remarkable." "Master Bruce has had considerable practice facing fear," Alfred noted, his understated tone carrying layers of meaning. When the examination was complete, Bruce changed into civilian clothes, feeling the bone-deep weariness that followed intense exposure to Crane's toxins. Despite the neutralizing agent, certain effects lingered: a heightened awareness of shadows, an enhanced sensitivity to subtle sounds. "You should rest," Chase advised. "Your system has undergone significant stress." Bruce nodded, knowing she was right but still feeling the pull of responsibility. "Gotham's water supply is being thoroughly treated by authorities," Alfred assured him. "Mr. Fox's neutralizing compound has been provided to GCPD and Public Works departments under the guise of Wayne Enterprises' public health initiatives. And my patients are already showing signs of recovery," Chase added. "The nightmare epidemic appears to be subsiding." Bruce allowed himself to acknowledge his exhaustion then. "Thank you, both of you. Your assistance was invaluable tonight." As Chase gathered her equipment to depart, Alfred accompanied her, leaving Bruce alone in the quiet of the cave. The familiar sounds surrounded him: water dripping through ancient stone, the distant rustle of bats, the gentle hum of technology. These had always been comforting rather than ominous, a reminder that fears could be transformed through purpose and meaning. He thought about what Crane had said regarding the architecture of fear, how terrors connected and built upon each other. There was truth there, though not in the way Crane believed. Fear did create structures in the mind, but those same structures could become foundations for courage when properly understood. Alfred returned, carrying a tray with tea that steamed gently in the cave's cool air. "Dr. Meridian has departed with assurances that she will monitor hospital discharges over the next few days," he reported, setting the tray nearby. "She also expressed particular interest in your dream experiences during this case. I believe the term she used was unprecedented psychological resilience." Bruce accepted the offered cup with a slight smile, high praise from someone who specializes in fear responses. "Indeed, sir." Alfred settled into a chair nearby, his presence as steady and reassuring as always. "Though I suspect she underestimates how thoroughly you've studied your own fears over the years." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the cave's ambient sounds creating a peaceful backdrop. Bruce felt the tension of the night gradually releasing, replaced by the calm that came with successful resolution. Sometimes I wonder what Crane might have accomplished if he'd channeled his brilliance differently, Bruce reflected. His understanding of neurochemistry is genuinely revolutionary, a question that might be asked of many of Gotham's more colorful characters, Alfred observed. Extraordinary capability misdirected often seems to be the common thread. Bruce nodded, sipping the tea that carried familiar notes of chamomile and something else, a blend Alfred had perfected years ago to help with post-mission relaxation. "Will you sleep, Master Bruce?" Alfred asked after a while, the question carrying layers of meaning beyond its simplicity. "Yes," Bruce replied, finding that he meant it. "I think I will." Later, as dawn approached outside, Bruce lay in his bedroom at Wayne Manor, listening to the continuing gentle rhythm of rain against the windows. The day's first birds had begun their calls, creating a counterpoint to the water's percussion. Sleep came more easily than he had expected, carrying him not into Crane's manufactured nightmares, but into natural dreams. Landscapes of his own mind's creation where shadows still lurked but held no power to overwhelm. In these dreams, as in waking life, he moved with purpose through darkness, guided by the knowledge that fear, properly understood, was not an end but a beginning, not a final truth but simply one chapter in a much longer story. And as Gotham awakened to a morning washed clean by rain, its citizens found their own dreams fading into memory, the shared nightmare already becoming less substantial with each passing hour. The architecture of fear that Crane had so carefully constructed dissolved like shadows touched by dawn, leaving behind only the resilience that had always been Gotham's true foundation, and Batman's as well. As dawn broke over Gotham City, the last remnants of Scarecrow's fear toxin dissipated with the morning mist. Bruce Wayne found himself in a rare moment of true rest, his sleep no longer disturbed by manufactured nightmares. The gentle rhythm of rain against the windows of Wayne Manor created a soothing backdrop, washing away the shadows that had threatened to engulf the city's collective consciousness. In these quiet moments between crises, Batman's mind began to drift toward new mysteries forming on Gotham's horizon. Even as one threat receded, another was taking shape, this one moving with precision and purpose, marking time with methodical patience. Somewhere in the city, gears were turning, mechanisms aligning with quiet inevitability. The transition from fear to fascination was gradual, like the subtle shift from night to day. As Bruce drifted deeper into restful sleep, his subconscious began to attune itself to a different rhythm, not the chaotic pulsing of terror that Scarecrow had orchestrated, but something more measured and deliberate. A ticking sound, almost imperceptible at first, that would soon draw Batman into a new realm of mystery. From the echoing shadows of primal fears to the measured precision of clockwork intricacy, Gotham's guardian would find himself navigating a labyrinth of time and mechanism. But that journey, the clockwork reverie, was just beginning to take shape. As peaceful sleep finally claimed the city's watchful protector, rain tapped gently against the Batcave's distant skylights, creating a soothing rhythm that echoed through the vast underground chamber. Bruce Wayne sat before the array of monitors, his cowl resting beside him on the console. The soft blue glow of the screens illuminated his features as he studied the pattern of thefts that had occurred across Gotham over the past week. Each crime scene had been meticulously arranged, leaving behind an unmistakable calling card, riddles written on parchment paper, sealed with an emerald wax emblem of a question mark. "I've prepared some chamomile tea, Master Bruce," Alfred's voice floated through the cave's ambient sounds, the distant drip of water from stalactites, the occasional flutter of bats' wings, the gentle hum of the computer systems. You've been pondering those riddles for nearly 6 hours now. Bruce accepted the steaming cup with a grateful nod, inhaling the calming aroma as Alfred settled into the chair beside him. Something's different about these puzzles, Alfred. They're not just about showing off his intellect this time. Each location, each stolen artifact, they're forming a pattern I can't quite grasp yet. Alfred leaned forward, studying the images displayed across the monitors. The first theft had occurred at the Gotham Horological Society, an antique pocket watch once belonging to the city's founding family. The second, a leather-bound journal from the Historical Society's restricted archives. The third, a brass astrolabe from the Maritime Museum's collection of navigation instruments. 3 thefts, 3 riddles, Bruce murmured, his fingers tracing the elegant script on digital scans of the riddle cards. Listen to this one from the Horological Society. I mark the moments of your life, yet have no hands to touch. I witness Gotham's first breath, though time has taken much. When hands point true north at midnight, memory becomes the key. Seek where builders laid their final stone, and there you'll find me. Alfred straightened slightly, his eyes narrowing in thought. The old clock tower at Cathedral Square, perhaps. It was the last structure completed in Old Gotham before the great expansion westward. Bruce nodded slowly, taking a sip of the fragrant tea. That's what I thought too. But I've already searched the clock tower thoroughly. Nothing there but pigeons and dust. He switched to another image, the riddle left at the Historical Society. This one reads, "Pages turned by forgotten hands tell stories left untold. Beneath the guardian of knowledge, secrets grow cold. When shadow meets light at perfect balance, wisdom shall be revealed. Look to where Gotham's heart was first sealed." The original City Hall archives, Alfred suggested, now part of the University Library's special collections. Bruce set down his teacup, his expression thoughtful. That's where Barbara's been focusing her research. She's accessing the digital archives now. He gestured toward another monitor where lines of code scrolled steadily as Oracle worked remotely, searching through centuries of Gotham's documented history. The third riddle appeared on the central screen. Stars guided sailors home when darkness claimed the sky. I measured heaven's movements as years went passing by. Where water meets stone and time stands still, the traveler finds his way. Return to where Gotham first welcomed ships to stay. The old harbor lighthouse, Bruce and Alfred said simultaneously. A small smile touched Bruce's lips. Already dispatched the Batwing to scan the area. Nothing unusual detected. Alfred studied Bruce's face, noting the slight furrow between his brows that appeared only when a puzzle truly challenged him. If I may, sir, there seems to be something these locations have in common beyond their historical significance. Bruce turned to him, one eyebrow raised in silent question. The Olmark transitions, Alfred continued, his voice gentle in the cave's vastness. The clock tower was built as Gotham transformed from village to city. The archives preserved the moment when scattered settlements became a unified government. The lighthouse guided Gotham's evolution into a trade harbor. He paused, adding thoughtfully, rather like certain moments in your own journey, if I may be so bold. Bruce's expression shifted subtly as he considered Alfred's words. Transitions, moments of change. He turned back to the screens, eyes scanning the riddles with renewed focus. But what is Riddler building toward? These aren't just random historical artifacts. They're pieces of something larger. The soft ping of an incoming communication interrupted his thoughts. Barbara's voice filled the cave, calm and measured. Batman, I've found something interesting in the city archives. Each of these locations appears in a series of architectural plans dated exactly 100 years ago today. They were part of a proposed Gotham Centennial Memorial that was never built. Who was the architect? Bruce asked, already pulling up additional search parameters on his keyboard. That's where it gets interesting, Barbara replied. The plans were submitted anonymously, but I've been analyzing the drafting style. It matches other works by Theodore Cobblepot, Oswald's great-grandfather, Bruce murmured. The very same, Alfred confirmed. Theodore was something of a black sheep in the Cobblepot family, more interested in art and philosophy than the shipping empire his brothers were building. Bruce leaned back in his chair, the pieces beginning to align in his mind. The stolen watch belonged to the Wayne family, but was gifted to the Cobblepots as part of a business arrangement. The journal might contain Theodore's personal writings, and the astrolabe was commissioned by the Cobblepot Shipping Company for their flagship vessel, Barbara completed. I'm sending you the architectural plans now. There's something else you should see. The monitors flickered as new images appeared. Yellowed blueprints showing an elaborate structure that would have connected all three locations with underground passages, centered around what appeared to be a massive mechanical installation beneath the current site of Wayne Tower. A clockwork mechanism of some kind, Bruce observed, zooming in on the intricate drawings, far more sophisticated than anything that should have existed a century ago. Alfred adjusted his glasses, studying the designs with growing interest. Master Bruce, if I'm not mistaken, this bears a striking resemblance to the theoretical designs of Charles Grant, a contemporary of Nikola Tesla, who disappeared under mysterious circumstances shortly after publishing his work on mechanical computation devices. His theories were considered far ahead of their time. A steam portal party computer, Bruce said softly, the implications settling over him like the gentle shadows of the cave. Cobblepot was trying to build a mechanical computer beneath Gotham, using these three locations as anchor points. He stood suddenly, moving toward the suit chamber with purposeful strides. Riddler isn't just stealing artifacts. He's reassembling Cobblepot's machine, piece by piece. But to what end, sir? Alfred called after him. Bruce paused, half turned in the blue-tinged light. That's what I need to find out, and I think I know where the next piece might be hidden. The rain had softened to a misty drizzle as Batman emerged from the cave, the Batmobile gliding silently through the night-shrouded forest surrounding Wayne Manor. As the city lights of Gotham began to appear on the horizon, he activated the communication link. Oracle, I need everything you can find on Theodore Cobblepot's final days. Where did he live? Who were his associates? Already on it, Barbara responded. According to what I've found, Theodore became increasingly reclusive in his later years. He purchased an old lighthouse keeper's cottage on the eastern edge of Gotham Harbor, isolated, especially by the standards of his wealthy family. The lighthouse from the riddle, Batman confirmed. Exactly, but here's where it gets strange. There are no records of his death. No burial information. He simply disappeared from historical records around 1925. His family reported him missing, but the case was never solved. The Batmobile curved around the moonlit roads leading into Old Gotham, its engine a soft purr beneath the vehicle's reinforced shell. What about his associates? He corresponded regularly with several prominent scientists and philosophers of his time, Barbara continued. But his closest confidant appears to have been Dr. Eleanor Marsh, one of Gotham's first female archaeologists and historians. She specialized in, this is interesting, ancient timekeeping devices. Batman's gloved fingers tapped a sequence on the console, bringing up additional information on the vehicle's heads-up display. Any living descendants? Just one, Barbara replied after a brief pause. Her great-granddaughter, Professor Cassandra Marsh Elliott. She's the current curator of Gotham University's collection of historical, scientific instruments. Where is she now? According to university records, she's working late tonight, cataloging a new acquisition to the collection, a mechanical model of the solar system from the late 1800s. Batman adjusted his course, the Batmobile turning smoothly toward Gotham University's historic campus. Alfred, what do we know about solar system models from that era? Alfred's voice came through the communication link, thoughtful and measured. Orreries, they were called, quite sophisticated mechanical representations of the planet's movements. The finest examples were precision-crafted with clockwork mechanisms that could accurately predict celestial alignments years in advance. Like an eclipse, Batman said quietly. Precisely, sir. And if I recall correctly, Gotham is due to experience a partial lunar eclipse tonight, beginning in approximately 3 hours. The implications settled into place with the gentle inevitability of clockwork gears aligning. Riddler's timetable. Whatever he's planning with Cobblepot's machine, it's synchronized to the eclipse. The Gothic spires of Gotham University emerged through the light rain, their ancient stonework glistening in the diffused moonlight. Batman guided the Batmobile to a secluded corner of the campus, engaging the vehicle's stealth systems before exiting silently into the misty night. The science building stood some distance away, a blend of century-old architecture and modern additions, its windows mostly darkened save for a few scattered lights on the upper floors. Oracle, which room is Professor Marsh Elliott working in? East Wing, 4th floor, room 427, Barbara replied promptly. The historical instruments collection occupies the entire floor. Security cameras show she's alone, working near the central display area. Batman moved through the shadows of the campus with practiced ease, his cape gathering the darkness around him. Rather than entering through conventional means, he ascended the building's exterior using the old stone gargoyles as handholds, making his way to a partially open window on the 4th floor. The collection room was vast and dimly lit, with glass cases containing centuries of humanity's attempts to measure and understand the universe. Astrolabes, quadrants, sextants, and telescopes gleamed softly under subtle lighting designed to protect the delicate artifacts. At the room's center stood a woman in her early 50s, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun as she carefully adjusted a magnificent brass orrery positioned beneath a domed skylight. Batman observed her for a moment, noting the focused precision of her movements and the reverent way she handled the antique mechanism. She worked in comfortable silence, occasionally murmuring to herself as she referenced notes on a nearby tablet. The only other sounds were the gentle ticking of dozens of antique clocks and the soft patter of rain against the skylight above. He stepped from the shadows, moving deliberately to avoid startling her. Professor Marshallett. Despite his caution, she jolted slightly, turning quickly toward his voice. Her surprise lasted only a moment before her expression settled into something resigned expectation. Batman, I wondered if you'd figure it out. She gestured to the orrery before her. You're earlier than I anticipated. The riddles must have been more straightforward than he intended. Batman moved closer, studying both the professor and the mechanical solar system model. You know why I'm here. She nodded, her hands still working methodically to align the brass planets on their intricate tracks. Edward Nigma approached me 3 weeks ago. He was surprisingly knowledgeable about my great-grandmother's work with Theodore Cobblepot. He asked for my help in reconstructing what they called the Chronos engine. The clockwork computer, Batman said. So much more than that, Cassandra corrected gently. Cobblepot and my great-grandmother believed they had discovered something profound about the nature of time itself. Specifically how certain moments in history create resonance patterns that echo forward, shaping future events. Her fingers traced the elliptical orbit of a miniature brass Saturn. Batman circled the display slowly, noting the precise craftsmanship of the orrery. It appeared authentically antique, yet something about the gearing mechanism seemed subtly modern. And what does Riddler want with a century-old theory about temporal resonance? Cassandra's expression grew troubled. He believes the engine can do more than detect these patterns, that it could potentially influence them, create what Cobblepot called mnemonic anchors in the collective consciousness of Gotham. She looked up at Batman, her academic detachment giving way to genuine concern. Enigma is convinced that tonight's eclipse creates perfect conditions for the engine to access what he calls Gotham's memory well, the accumulated psychic imprint of the city's most significant moments. To what end? And wasn't entirely clear. Something about rewriting the narrative and correcting historical injustices. But his methods, she shook her head. My great-grandmother and Cobblepot abandoned their research when they realized its potential dangers. They deliberately separated the components and hid them throughout the city. Batman's attention shifted to the orrery. This is the final component. Cassandra nodded. The calculation module. It uses the movements of the planets as a computational framework. Cobblepot disguised it as a simple astronomical model to avoid suspicion. She hesitated, then admitted, I've been restoring it over the past week, at Nigma's request. He was persuasive. Threatened you? Batman asked, his voice low. Not exactly. Her fingers worried at a pendant hanging around her neck. An antique timepiece. He has my great-grandmother's personal journals. They contain knowledge that could be dangerous in the wrong hands, but they're also my family's legacy. He promised to return them once the engine was assembled. She looked at Batman directly. I'm not a fool. I knew he might not honor that promise, but I couldn't risk losing those journals forever. Batman's gaze moved to the skylight, where the clouded moon was occasionally visible through breaks in the rain. Where is the assembly point? Where is Riddler taking the components? The original plans called for the engine to be housed deep beneath what is now Wayne Tower, Cassandra explained, but that space has been renovated many times over the past century. Nigma mentioned an alternative location, somewhere the city's heartbeat could still be clearly felt. She frowned, trying to recall his exact words. Something about where the city's arteries converge, yet time stands eternally still. Batman's eyes narrowed slightly. The central terminal clock. The abandoned train station. Cassandra looked surprised. Of course. The massive clock that stopped during the great earthquake of 97. It's been frozen at 8:27 ever since. A moment when time literally stood still for Gotham, Batman said quietly. The perfect symbolic location for Riddler's purposes. Cassandra glanced at her watch, a worried expression crossing her face. The eclipse begins in less than 2 hours. The orrery is nearly calibrated to track it precisely. She hesitated, then made a decision. Take it. Stop him from activating the engine. Whatever his intentions, my great-grandmother believed the technology was too unpredictable to be used safely. Batman moved toward the orrery, then paused as his comm unit activated. Alfred's voice came through, urgent yet controlled. Sir, I've been analyzing the blueprints Oracle recovered. If I am understanding the principles correctly, the Chronos engine requires a specific electromagnetic frequency to activate, one that can only be generated by a device matching the exact specifications of all 4 components working in harmony. Meaning, Batman prompted, meaning that any attempt to remove the orrery from its calibration setting might render the entire mechanism inoperable, but it would also prevent Riddler from completing his plan. Batman looked at Cassandra, who nodded in confirmation. The alignment is incredibly precise. Once disturbed, it would take days to recalibrate properly. Then we use it as leverage, Batman decided. Professor, I need you to continue your work. Make it appear that you're completing the calibration, but introduce a subtle error. Something Riddler wouldn't notice immediately, but that would prevent the engine from functioning correctly. Cassandra considered this, then nodded slowly. I could misalign the Jupiter component by a few degrees. The orbital calculations would appear correct until the actual moment of the eclipse, but the resonance frequency would be impossible to achieve. Do it, Batman instructed. Then prepare the orrery for transport. Riddler will be expecting you to deliver it to Central Terminal, and you'll be waiting for him, she concluded. Batman moved back toward the window. Oracle will maintain contact with you. Follow her instructions precisely. He paused, looking back at the professor. Your great-grandmother made the right choice a century ago. Some knowledge isn't meant to be used, no matter how noble the intention. Cassandra's hands returned to the orrery, making the subtle adjustments they had discussed. My great-grandmother used to say that time is like a river, powerful enough to carve canyons, yet gentle enough to nurture life along its banks. It's not meant to be dammed or diverted. As Batman disappeared into the rainy night, her words lingered in his mind, merging with the gentle rhythms of the city around him. Gotham at night had its own pulse, the distant sirens, the hum of traffic, the whispered conversations from apartment windows left open to catch the rain-cooled air, all forming a tapestry of moments, individual lives contributing to the greater pattern of the city's existence. The Batmobile responded instantly to his return, systems activating as he settled into the driver's seat. Alfred, what do we know about Central Terminal's current security? Minimal at best, sir, Alfred replied. The city maintains basic surveillance of the historic structure, but the interior has been largely abandoned since the newer transit hub opened 15 years ago. The clock tower section in particular has been deemed structurally unsound following several small tremors in recent years. Perfect isolation for Riddler's purposes, Batman noted. Oracle, can you access the terminal's original blueprints? I need to know every entrance, every maintenance passage. Already compiled, Barclay responded. Sending to your onboard system now. I've also been tracking unusual power fluctuations in that area over the past week. Someone's been drawing significant electricity from the grid, but routing it through multiple junction points to mask the final destination. Preparations for the engine, Batman confirmed. What about Riddler's known associates? Any unusual movements? Nothing from his regular crew, Barbara said. This operation seems unusually contained. Either he's working alone, or he's recruited help that doesn't appear in our databases. Batman considered this as the Batmobile curved through Gotham's rain-slicked streets, heading toward the abandoned grandeur of Central Terminal. He'd need technical expertise to assemble Cobblepot's machine, even with the original blueprints. Someone with knowledge of both antique mechanisms and modern power systems. Perhaps our Professor Marsh Elliot isn't being entirely forthcoming, Alfred suggested. Her expertise would make her an ideal collaborator, willing or otherwise. Or Riddler has found another expert, Batman countered. Oracle, run a check on recent visitors to Arkham Asylum. Specifically, any historians or engineers who might have consulted with Nigma during his last incarceration. The soft sound of rapid typing came through the comlink, followed by Barbara's thoughtful hum. Interesting. Dr. Julian Haywood, an engineering professor specializing in historical mechanical systems, visited Arkham 8 times over the past year. Officially, he was documenting inmates' problem-solving approaches for a research study on cognitive patterns. And unofficially, his university expense reports show purchases of antique mechanical parts and specialized tools immediately following several of these visits. Nothing explicitly suspicious, but the timing is convenient. Batman's eyes narrowed slightly. Where is Haywood now? A brief pause, then. His department says he's on sabbatical. No teaching assignments for the current semester. His credit card was last used 3 days ago at a hardware store near Central Terminal. Our second conspirator, Batman confirmed. Alfred, compile everything we have on Haywood. I need to understand what would motivate an academic to assist in Riddler's scheme. Already searching, sir. Preliminary findings suggest Dr. Haywood's great-grandfather worked briefly with Theodore Cobblepot as a mechanical assistant. There may be a personal connection to this Chronos engine project. The Batmobile approached the outskirts of the Terminal District, an area of Gotham caught between abandonment and gentrification. Once the proud transportation hub of the city, Central Terminal now stood as a magnificent relic. Its soaring arched windows dark, its ornate facade slowly surrendering to decades of neglect. The massive clock face, visible from blocks away, remained frozen at 8:27, its hands unmoved since the earthquake that had damaged the mechanism beyond conventional repair. Batman guided the vehicle into the shadows of a derelict loading dock, engaging stealth systems before exiting. The rain had diminished to a fine mist that hung in the air, diffusing the sparse streetlights into gentle halos of amber and blue. The terminal building loomed ahead, its once golden stonework now stained with urban grime and verdant streaks of moss. I'm approaching the East Maintenance entrance, he subvocalized into his comm. Oracle? Status on Professor Marsh Elliott? She's completed the modifications to the orrery and is preparing to transport it as instructed, Barbara replied. I've arranged for one of our operatives to intercept her on the way, ensuring her safety while maintaining the appearance that she's fulfilling Riddler's instructions. Batman moved through the shadows surrounding the terminal, his enhanced vision cutting through the darkness to reveal signs of recent activity. Freshly broken locks, subtle scuff marks on the weathered stone steps, the faint impression of wheeled equipment being moved across the debris-strewn ground. The maintenance entrance had been recently forced, though efforts had been made to disguise this fact. Inside, the terminal's vast main concourse stretched into darkness, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. Once bustling with travelers, the space now stood in reverent silence, dust motes drifting through shafts of diffused moonlight that penetrated the magnificent arched windows. Batman moved silently across the marble floor, following the barely perceptible trail of recent passage toward the central clock tower. Sir, Alfred's voice came through the comm, soft but urgent. I've completed my analysis of Dr. Haywood's background. He appears to have developed an obsession with Theodore Cobblepot's work, particularly after discovering family papers suggesting his great-grandfather may have contributed significant innovations to the Cronus engine design without receiving credit. Intellectual property dispute carried through generations, Batman murmured, combined with Riddler's obsession with puzzles and patterns. A dangerous combination indeed, Alfred confirmed. Moreover, Dr. Hayward published several papers on the theoretical possibility of using mechanical computation to influence collective memory, essentially how shared beliefs about past events might be subtly altered through the right application of resonant frequencies. Batman paused at the base of the clock tower stairwell, his sensors detecting faint electrical activity above. They're attempting to rewrite history, not in the literal sense, but altering how Gotham's citizens remember and interpret significant events from the city's past. Sir, if I may, Alfred interjected, his voice contemplative. This resonates rather curiously with certain philosophical questions you've wrestled with yourself. How Batman's presence has shaped Gotham's perception of its own narrative, whether the symbol you created has ultimately changed the city's understanding of its own potential. The observation settled over Batman like the gentle mist outside, an insight typical of Alfred's quiet wisdom. Symbols have power, he acknowledged softly, but they should be freely embraced, not artificially imposed. He began ascending the spiral staircase toward the clock mechanism, moving with practiced silence despite the ancient iron steps. Above, the sounds of activity grew more distinct. The soft murmur of voices, the metallic clicks and whirs of machinery being assembled, the hum of electrical equipment powering up. Eclipse begins in 42 minutes, Oracle reported. Professor Marsh Elliott should be delivering the orrery to our operative in 10. Batman reached a landing just below the clock chamber, pausing to survey the situation through a gap in the partially open door. The vast space behind the massive clock face had been transformed into an impromptu laboratory. The 3 stolen artifacts, the pocket watch, journal, and astrolabe, had been carefully integrated into a larger mechanical assembly that occupied the center of the room. Brass gears, copper coils, and intricate clockwork components formed a structure reminiscent of a Victorian astronomical computer, yet with an unsettling organic quality to its design, as though the machine were somehow alive. Riddler himself stood before the assembly, his green suit immaculate despite the dusty surroundings, his hands moving with surprising delicacy as he adjusted components beneath a focused worklight. Nearby, an older man with wild grey hair and wire-rimmed glasses, presumably Dr. Hayward, monitored readings on several cobbled-together instruments that blended antique gauges with modern digital displays. The resonance frequency is stabilizing, Hayward was saying, excitement evident in his voice. Once we integrate the calculation module, we should be able to achieve the harmonic convergence during the peak of the eclipse. And with it a subtle yet profound recalibration of Gotham's collective memory, Riddler responded, satisfaction coloring his words. Certain forgotten innovators finally receiving their due recognition in the public consciousness. Certain wealthy families' contributions properly contextualized. He straightened, checking an antique pocket watch. The professor should be arriving with our final component shortly. Batman withdrew slightly, assessing the situation. The machine appeared nearly complete, lacking only the orrery that Professor Marsh Elliott had modified. His best approach would be to wait until they attempted to integrate the final component, allowing their frustration and confusion over its failure to provide distraction. Oracle, he subvocalized, when our operative intercepts the professor, have them wait exactly 7 minutes. Then send a text message to Riddler indicating that she's been delayed by unexpected security near the terminal. Understood, Barbara replied. That should buy you more time to... She paused suddenly. Batman. I'm detecting a new power surge in the terminal building, much larger than before. They're drawing enough electricity to power several city blocks. Inside the clock chamber, Hayward's voice rose with excitement. Edward, look at these readings. The harmonic resonance is building on its own. The three components are beginning to synchronize without the calculation module. Batman moved immediately, pushing through the door into the chamber. Shut it down, Nigma. Both men whirled toward him, Riddler recovering quickly from his surprise. Ah, the detective arrives, right on schedule, or should I say, right on clockwork. His casual tone belied the tension in his posture. I'd ask if you've solved all my little riddles, but your presence here rather answers that question. Hayward backed toward the machine protectively. It's too late to stop it. The resonance cascade has already begun. Even without the orrery, the engine has achieved partial synchronization with the temporal field. Batman moved further into the room, positioning himself between the two men and their creation. You're manipulating forces you don't fully understand. Cobblepot and Marsh abandoned this project for good reason. Because they lacked vision, Hayward snapped, his academic reserve giving way to long-harbored bitterness. My great-grandfather saw the true potential of the engine, not just to observe temporal resonance, but to shape it, to correct historical oversights, to ensure that history remembers the right names, Batman concluded, including his. Riddler twirled his question mark cane thoughtfully. Everyone wants to be remembered, Batman, to leave their mark on Gotham's story. Even you with your symbolism and theatrical flourishes. He gestured expansively at the chamber around them. We're simply making some editorial adjustments to the historical record, ensuring that certain contributions aren't forgotten in the shadow of more prominent families. The machine behind them hummed with increasing intensity, brass components beginning to rotate of their own accord as energy flowed through the system. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken, taking on an almost syrupy quality, as light bent strangely around the apparatus. Oracle, Batman sub-vocalized. The engine is activating without the orrery, some kind of self-sustaining reaction. The eclipse is beginning, she reported urgently. The moon is entering Earth's penumbra now. Whatever effect they're expecting, it would theoretically start manifesting soon. Batman's gaze moved between Riddler, Hayward, and the increasingly active machine. The danger here wasn't conventional. No explosion threatening the city, no toxin to be neutralized. Instead, something more subtle yet potentially more invasive. An attempt to alter how Gotham's citizens understood their own history and identity. Your machine won't achieve what you're hoping for, Batman told them, moving slowly around the edge of the room. Professor Marsh Elliott explained the principles. Without the precise calibration only the orrery can provide, the temporal resonance will be unstable. Hayward's expression flickered with uncertainty. She told you that, but the preliminary harmonics are already forming. The engine is working. Is it? Batman challenged. Or is it simply drawing power and creating an impressive light show? Check your readings more carefully, Doctor. The pattern isn't stabilizing. It's oscillating randomly. Doubt crept into Hayward's features as he turned back to his instruments. Riddler, however, seemed unperturbed, his smile knowing. A valiant attempt at psychological manipulation, Batman. But we prepared for the possibility that the good professor might be persuaded to interfere. He produced a small device from his pocket, a modern tablet displaying complex equations. Dr. Hayward has already calculated the necessary adjustments. We don't need the physical orrery, just the mathematical principles it embodies. The machine's humming intensified, components spinning faster as the electrical systems surged. Outside, through the massive clock face, the moon was visibly darkening along one edge as the eclipse began in earnest. The atmosphere in the chamber grew increasingly strange. Shadows seemed to move independently of their sources, and dust motes hung suspended in the air as if time itself were beginning to behave erratically. "Sir," Alfred's voice came through the comm, "I've been analyzing the blueprints more thoroughly. The Chronos engine appears to operate on principles similar to quantum entanglement, creating resonance patterns that propagate through what Cobblepot called the collective subconscious of Gotham's population." "Can it actually work?" Batman asked softly. "Theoretically, perhaps," Alfred admitted, "but not with their current configuration. The mathematical models Dr. Hayward is using are fundamentally flawed. If they proceed, the resonance could manifest in completely unexpected ways." Batman turned his attention back to Riddler and Hayward. "Your calculations are wrong. Without Marsh Elliott's expertise with the original designs, you're working from incomplete data." Hayward hesitated, glancing between his tablet and the increasingly unstable machine. Condensation was forming on the brass components as the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. The shadows cast by the apparatus seemed to move independently of the light sources, stretching and contracting in unnatural patterns. "Edward," Hayward said, his confidence wavering, "some of these readings don't match our projections. The harmonic convergence is occurring, but it's distorted somehow." Riddler's self-assured expression faltered slightly as he moved to examine the instruments. "A minor calibration issue. Adjust the primary resonator to compensate." But as Hayward attempted to make the adjustments, the machine's behavior grew more erratic. Gears that had been spinning synchronously began to move at discordant rates, creating a jarring, arrhythmic clicking that echoed through the chamber. The electrical hum rose to an uncomfortable pitch. "It's destabilizing," Hayward warned, real fear entering his voice. "The temporal field is collapsing in on itself." Batman moved swiftly toward the main power coupling. "Cut the electrical supply, now." For once, Riddler didn't object, his usual arrogance giving way to scientific pragmatism as he recognized the danger. Together, they began disconnecting power sources while Hayward worked frantically to slow the machine's momentum, gradually, preventing a catastrophic energy release. As the power diminished, the unnatural phenomena in the room slowly subsided. The strange light effects receded, the temperature normalized, and the discordant sounds of misaligned gears gradually wound down to silence. Outside, through the clock face, the eclipse continued its natural progression, the moon slowly taking a bite from the sun's perfect circle. In the sudden quiet that followed, Riddler looked at the now dormant machine with an expression of genuine disappointment. "So close," he murmured. "We were so close to proving the theory correct." "The theory itself wasn't wrong," Batman told him, securing the final power connection. Cobblepot and Marsh were onto something real about how symbols and shared experiences shape collective memory, but they were wise enough to realize that such influence shouldn't be artificially manipulated. Hayward sank into a chair, the excitement and defiance drained from his bearing. "My great-grandfather believed it could be used benevolently, to heal historical wounds, to restore forgotten contributions to their proper place. And in the right hands, perhaps it could," Batman acknowledged. "But history isn't meant to be engineered. It evolves through countless individual experiences and interpretations, messy, contradictory, and deeply human." The sound of police sirens became audible in the distance, growing steadily closer. Riddler sighed theatrically, twirling his cane once more. I suppose this concludes our little horological adventure. Though I must say, Batman, you've proven yourself a worthy opponent in this particular game of temporal chess. He glanced at the machine with genuine intellectual curiosity. I wonder what would have happened if we'd succeeded. Nothing dramatic, Batman replied. No sudden rewiring of memories or personalities. Just subtle shifts in how people perceive certain historical events, certain family legacies. He looked directly at Riddler, including the Wayne family history you were targeting. Riddler's eyebrows rose fractionally, the closest he would come to admitting Batman had correctly discerned his ultimate aim. The Waynes, the Cobblepots, the Elliots, all Gotham's founding families have their carefully curated narratives, some more sanitized than others. Batman moved to secure both men as the police approached the building. History is rarely kind to anyone, Nigma. The best we can do is learn from it, not rewrite it. Later, as the eclipse reached its midpoint, Batman stood on a rooftop overlooking the terminal, watching as police officers escorted Riddler and Hayward to waiting vehicles. The machine components had been carefully catalogued and secured, destined for a vault where their unique technology could be studied safely. Master Bruce, Alfred's voice came through his comm. Professor Marsh Elliot has arrived at the manor as you suggested. She's brought her great-grandmother's journals, which Riddler had indeed returned to her as a gesture of professional courtesy. She's agreed to let us digitize them before they go to the university archives. Indeed, she seems quite relieved that the engine has been neutralized. She mentioned something rather interesting about her great-grandmother's final entries. Apparently, Eleanor Marsh came to believe that Gotham already had its own natural form of temporal resonance, that certain families, certain individuals, were naturally positioned as focal points for the city's evolving identity. Batman watched as the police vehicles pulled away from the terminal, their lights casting brief patterns across the aging stonework. Gotham shapes its own narrative, with or without mechanical assistance. A comforting thought in its way, Alfred replied, that the city's character emerges organically from the actions and beliefs of its citizens, rather than being imposed by any single force. As the eclipse began its gradual retreat, returning moonlight to the city below, Batman found himself reflecting on Riddler's core obsession, the need to be remembered, to leave a permanent mark on history. It was a fundamentally human desire, one that drove both great achievements and terrible crimes. Oracle, he said softly, what happened with the terminal clock? Did the engine's activation affect it in any way? Barbara's typing paused briefly. Actually, yes. According to police reports, the clock's mechanism briefly activated during the incident. The hands moved for the first time in decades. Just a slight tremor, but definitely movement. Which direction? Batman asked. That's the strange part, Barbara replied. One officer reported that the minute hand moved forward slightly, while another insisted it moved backward. The technicians examining it now can't find any change to the mechanism at all. Batman allowed himself a small smile as he turned away from the scene below, his cape gathering the night around him like memory itself, both concealing and revealing, both past and future held in perfect balance. Perhaps some questions are better left as riddles. The gentle rhythms of the city at night embraced him as he moved across the rooftops of Gotham, a city eternally becoming, eternally remembering, its story written not in the grand gestures of would-be controllers, but in the quiet moments of connection and choice that formed its true and enduring heart. Back in the Batcave, hours later, Bruce sat before the main computer, cowl set aside as he reviewed the night's events. The screen displayed detailed scans of the Chronos engine components, their intricate mechanisms rendered in precise, digital clarity. Beside him, Alfred placed a fresh cup of tea on the console, chamomile again, its gentle aroma rising in the cave's cool air. Professor Marsh Elliott departed an hour ago, Alfred informed him. The journals have been fully digitized and encrypted. Fascinating reading, if rather technical in parts. Her great-grandmother had quite a gift for mechanical engineering, particularly impressive given the limited opportunities available to women in her era. Bruce nodded absently, his attention caught by a particular gear assembly in the engine's design. There's something familiar about this configuration, Alfred. It reminds me of something in Father's old collection of mechanical puzzles. Alfred leaned closer, studying the image. Indeed, sir. The Wayne family has always had an appreciation for intricate mechanisms. Your father often mentioned that his great-grandfather collaborated with several prominent inventors of his time. Bruce turned to look at him, one eyebrow raised slightly. You never mentioned that before, didn't I? Perhaps it slipped my mind. Alfred's expression remained impassive, though a hint of amusement touched his eyes. The past is full of connections we discover only when we're ready to see them. As Bruce returned to studying the engine's components, the cave settled around them into comfortable silence, broken only by the distant drip of water, the occasional soft chirp of bats, and the gentle ticking of the antique clock that had belonged to Thomas Wayne, keeping perfect time as it had through generations of Gotham's ever-unfolding story. Outside, the night continued its patient journey toward dawn, the eclipse now complete, the moon restored to its full luminance. Across Gotham, citizens slept and dreamed, their individual memories weaving together into the shared tapestry of the city's identity, a process far more profound and resilient than any machine could hope to alter. In the days that followed, Bruce found himself returning to the digitized journals of Eleanor Marsh, reading through her meticulous notes on the Chronos engine project with growing fascination. Her insights into temporal resonance theory were remarkably advanced for her era, blending rigorous scientific methodology with philosophical questions about the nature of collective memory and shared experience. She was quite ahead of her time, Alfred remarked one evening, setting down a fresh pot of tea in Bruce's study. Her understanding of how symbols and stories shape a community's self-perception parallels much of modern sociological theory. Bruce nodded, scrolling through another page of elegant handwritten formulas. What strikes me is how she and Cobblepot began to question their own work. They started with pure scientific curiosity, but as they progressed, ethical considerations became increasingly central to their research. The hallmark of true wisdom, Alfred observed, recognizing when knowledge outpaces our capacity to use it responsibly. Outside the study windows, Gotham's skyline glittered in the evening light, a constellation of human endeavor, each building representing generations of dreams, decisions, and destiny. From Wayne Tower's commanding presence to the humble brownstones of the historic districts, the city's architecture itself told a story of continuity and change. Bruce's gaze lingered on the distant silhouette of Central Terminal, its frozen clock face just visible against the darkening sky. Riddler's been unusually quiet since his transfer back to Arkham. Oracle says he's requested access to historical texts rather than his usual puzzle collections. Perhaps your encounter gave him something new to contemplate, Alfred suggested. A riddle without the satisfaction of a definitive answer. Later that night, as Batman moved through Gotham's ever-changing landscape, he found himself paying closer attention to the city's historical markers, the plaques, monuments, and preserved buildings that anchored collective memory in physical space. Each represented a choice about what was worth remembering, what stories deserved to be passed down through generations. From his vantage point atop the old clock tower at Cathedral Square, the first location mentioned in Riddler's initial puzzle, Batman could see much of old Gotham spread beneath him. The streets followed patterns laid down centuries ago, when the city was little more than a trading post at the meeting of rivers. Though buildings had risen and fallen, been destroyed and rebuilt, something essential remained consistent, a distinctive character that persisted through all of Gotham's transformation. "Sir," Alfred's voice came through his comm, "I've been reviewing Professor Marsh Elliott's additional findings. Her analysis of the engine's components revealed something quite remarkable. The pocket watch, despite its Wayne family provenance, contains mechanical elements that appear to have been designed by Theodore Cobblepot himself, suggesting collaboration rather than competition between the families," Batman noted. "Indeed, and the journal contains references to joint ventures that don't appear in the official historical record. Cooperative efforts that shaped Gotham's early development in ways neither family fully documented publicly." Batman's gaze swept across the city's architectural tapestry, Gothic spires standing alongside Art Deco towers and sleek modern glass edifices. "History is rarely as simple as we're taught, Alfred. The narratives we inherit are just the surface of a much deeper, more complex reality. A reality that perhaps doesn't require mechanical intervention to be properly understood," Alfred agreed. "Just patience, curiosity, and a willingness to look beyond established assumptions." As Batman prepared to continue his patrol, a movement caught his attention. A flicker of green on a rooftop several blocks away. By the time he reached the location, whoever had been there was gone, but a small object remained, deliberately placed at the rooftop's edge. An antique puzzle box of intricate design, topped with a small question mark. Inside was a single sheet of parchment bearing Riddler's unmistakable handwriting. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some riddles better left as questions. History writes itself in the spaces between what we remember and what we forget. Until our next game of temporal chess, detective. Batman secured the puzzle box, a slight smile touching his lips as he returned to his patrol. In a city defined by constant evolution, perhaps the most valuable historical truth was simply this: that Gotham continually reinvented itself through the choices of those who called it home, each generation adding new layers to its ever-unfolding story. The night embraced him as he moved through its shadows, his own presence now an indelible part of Gotham's collective memory, not imposed through mechanical manipulation, but earned through countless quiet moments of protection and presence. A symbol freely embraced by a city that had always known how to write its own unique tale. And in that quiet moment between night and morning, Batman's legacy continued to write itself into Gotham's consciousness, not through manipulation or force, but through the simple, powerful truth of his presence in the city's darkest hours and most vulnerable moments. A symbol freely embraced rather than artificially imposed, a guardian of Gotham's right to remember its own story, in all its complicated glory. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, we will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.